The courtroom smelled faintly of polished wood and cold indifference. The kind of place where hope came to die quietly, beneath the steady tapping of lawyers' pens. At the defendant's table sat Martha Elwood, a widow who had already lost everything, except, perhaps, her dignity. And even that was slipping away before a room full of strangers. "Mrs. Elwood," the judge said with a smirk that twisted his lips, "you're asking this court for mercy. Perhaps you should have thought of that before you failed to pay your debts." A few chuckles rippled through the courtroom. The opposing lawyer, sharp suit, sharper tongue, leaned back with the smug ease of a man who'd already won. To him, Martha wasn't a person. She was a statistic, a cautionary tale about what happens when the poor fall behind. But to Martha, this wasn't about money. It was about home, the house her late husband, Harold, had built with his own hands. Every floorboard still held his laughter, every creak in the walls carried his memory. If you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in the idea that one good heart can change a life, listen closely. Because what happened next reminded everyone in that courtroom that not all heroes wear suit. Some ride motorcycles. Martha sat silently as the lawyer tore into her, word by word, paper by paper. Her public defender said nothing, barely looking up from his note. The judge, amused, waited for her to crumble. Outside the tall windows, the sun blazed bright, but inside her world was dim. Her story was simple and cruel. Harold had died suddenly 3 years earlier, a heart attack in the garage he'd built himself. The medical bills, the funeral, the empty space left behind, they had broken her. She'd fallen behind on payment. The bank, now owned by some faceless corporation, wanted her land, not her home. She had begged, written letters, pleaded with everyone she could, and when no one listened, she'd stopped asking. She thought the world had forgotten her. But fate had been quietly at work. 3 days before the trial, Martha had dropped her purse outside a small roadside diner. She hadn't even noticed. But a man sitting on a Harley had broad shoulders, tattooed arms, a leather vest that read Hell's Angels. He picked it up and jogged after her, calling out gently, "Ma'am, you dropped this." His name was Ronan. He looked like trouble but spoke like calm water. When he asked if she was all right, she smiled and lied. He saw the truth anyway, the exhaustion behind her eyes. She told him her story, not expecting anything. She just needed someone to listen. When she finished, Ronan said one thing. "You're not alone anymore, ma'am." She didn't believe him. Not until today. Back in the courtroom, the judge lifted his gavel, ready to deliver his final verdict. "This court hereby rules in favor of." The heavy doors creaked open. Every head turned. 3 men walked in, their boots striking the marble floor like thunder. At the front, Ronan, his beard catching the light. Behind him, a bald man built like a mountain, and a younger one with long hair and dark glasses. They didn't belong in that sterile room. Yet they carried a presence that made everyone sit up. The bailiff moved nervously, but Ronan raised a calm hand. "We're not here for trouble," he said. His voice was deep, steady, and certain. He walked straight to Martha's table and placed an envelope in front of her. "That's a certified check," he said to the judge. "Every cent she owes. The debt, the fees, the interest. You can stop laughing now." The room froze. The judge blinked. The opposing lawyer's smirk vanished. 10 long seconds passed before the judge cleared his throat. "If this payment is verified, this case is dismissed." Martha gasped. The sound broke the stillness. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she pressed trembling fingers to her mouth. The same courtroom that had felt like a tomb now felt like sunlight. She turned to Ronan, her voice cracking. "I don't even know how to thank you." Ronan smiled softly. "Told you, ma'am. You're not alone anymore." As the bikers turned to leave, something remarkable happened. The courtroom, that cold, judgmental space, began to applaud. Quiet at first, then stronger. Even the judge gave a reluctant nod. Martha sat back down, clutching her old handbag, the one that had started it all. Only now it didn't hold just memories. It held her new beginning. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, she sat on her porch again, the home still hers. The wind carried the distant sound of motorcycle engines fading into the horizon. She closed her eyes and whispered a prayer. Not for herself, but for the men who reminded her that angels don't always have wings. Sometimes they ride Harleys. There are moments in life when the world feels too cold to care. And yet, sometimes kindness rides in from the unlikeliest of places. The courtroom smelled of polished wood and quiet cruelty. The kind of place where hope goes to die beneath the sound of expensive shoes and laughter. At the defense table sat Martha Elwood, a widow, alone, her hands trembling around a single photograph of her husband. The judge looked down at her with a smirk that could cut glass. "Mrs. Elwood," he said, voice dripping with mock sympathy, "you're asking this court for mercy. But maybe you should have thought of that before you failed to pay your debts." Pause, faint background murmurs. Laughter rippled through the room. Even the plaintiff's lawyer, sharp suit, sharper smile, leaned back, satisfied. To them, she wasn't a woman. She was a number. A failure. Another broken soul to be processed and forgotten. But to Martha, this wasn't about money. It was about home, the small, creaky house her late husband, Harold, had built with his own hands. The walls still whispered with his voice. The wood still carried his laughter. And now, strangers wanted to erase it all with a stamp and a signature. Soft music fades lower. Her lawyer barely looked up from his note. The judge was ready to end it. And Martha, she sat in silence. A single tear rolled down her cheek, catching the courtroom light. Her story wasn't dramatic, just heartbreakingly ordinary. 3 years ago, Harold had died suddenly in their garage, a heart attack that ended their dreams overnight. The bills, the funeral, the empty house, they buried her deeper than grief ever could. The small-town bank she'd trusted for years had been swallowed by a corporation. To them, she was a liability, a piece of land, a signature on a page. She begged for time, wrote letters no one read. And when no one answered, she stopped asking. Long pause, faint ticking clock sound. But fate had been listening. Soft acoustic guitar begins, hopeful tone builds slowly. 3 days before the hearing, Martha had dropped her purse outside a roadside diner. She hadn't even noticed. But someone had. A man on a Harley, broad shoulders, tattooed arms, leather vest with the words Hell's Angels stitched across the back, watched it fall. He picked it up and jogged after her. "Ma'am," he said, holding it out gently, "you dropped this." She thanked him, tried to smile. But her eyes gave her away, the exhaustion, the quiet ache. His name was Ronan, and despite his rough edges, he had the kind of presence that could silence noise without saying a word. When he asked if she was all right, she told him her story. How she was losing her home, her last connection to the man she loved. She didn't ask for help. She just needed someone to listen. Ronan listened. Then he said something simple. Something she'd almost forgotten how to believe. "You're not alone anymore, ma'am." Soft music swells, fades. She smiled weakly, not believing him. But 3 days later, she would. Music changes, steady heartbeat rhythm, courtroom ambience. The judge raised his gavel. "Mrs. Elwood," he said coldly, "this court hereby rules in favor of the plaintiff." Pause. That's when the heavy double doors creaked open. Every head turned. The sound of boots echoed across the marble floor, slow, confident, unyielding. 3 men walked in. The first was Ronan. His beard caught the light, his eyes steady. Behind him, a bald man with arms like tree trunks, and a younger one with long hair and mirrored shades. They didn't belong in a courtroom, but somehow they belonged in that moment. The bailiff moved toward them, nervous. Ronan raised a calm hand. "We're not here for trouble," he said quietly. "Beat, the room stills." He walked straight to the defense table, stopping beside Martha. She looked up, confused, speechless. Ronan placed a thick envelope on the table. That's a certified check, he said, turning toward the judge. Every cent she owes. The debt. The interest. The fees. All of it. Paid. Pause, silence fills the room. For 10 full seconds, no one moved. Then the judge cleared his throat, eyes wide. If this payment is verified, he stammered, this case is dismissed. Soft gasp, faint applause. Martha covered her mouth, tears streaming down her face. The walls that had once felt like prison bars now gleamed with sunlight. The same people who pitied her moments ago, now looked at her in awe. Ronan smiled, helping her to her feet. Told you, ma'am, he whispered. You're not alone anymore. Soft piano returns, tender, emotional. The 3 bikers turned to leave. Their boots echoed one last time across the polished floor. Then came something no one expected. Applause. Slow. Sincere. Even the judge joined in, humbled and speechless. Fade to ambient outdoor sounds, evening breeze, distant motorcycle engines. That night, Martha sat on her porch, wrapped in a blanket, watching the sunset pour gold across her yard. For the first time in years, her home was safe. Her heart light. In the distance, she heard the faint growl of motorcycle engines fading down the road. She smiled through her tears and whispered a prayer. Not for herself, but for the men who reminded her that angels don't always have wings. Sometimes, they ride Harleys. Pause, soft music fades out completely. If this story touched your heart, take a moment to share it, because somewhere out there, someone still believes in doing good when the world stops caring. Soft outro piano, hopeful, fading,